Jefferson's text of the Declaration of Independence was revised by the Continental Congress to eliminate a justifiable attack on King George for encouraging slave trade. It was changed lest it offend the Southern representatives, just as today still legislation is discarded or emasculated lest it too give offense to Southern representatives. Jefferson knew that such compromises with principle struck at the heart of the nation's security and integrity. In 1820, 6 years before his death, he wrote these melancholy words. But this momentous question, like a fire in the night, awakened and filled me with terror. I considered it at once as the nail of the Union. I regret that I am now to die in the belief that the useless sacrifice of themselves by the generation of 1776 to acquire self-government and happiness to their country is to be thrown away. My only consolation is to be that I live not to weep over it. Our nation has experienced a ceaseless rebellion against the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Emancipation Proclamation, and the Supreme Court by one reason. In the Revolutionary War, powerful slave elements in the South fought with the British. The development of the nation to the West was complicated and hindered by the slave power. Only the Holocaust of war settled the direction and character of our growth. But the rebellion against equality continued into the second half of the 19th century and into the 20th century, diminishing the authority of the federal government and corroding its authority. It has contaminated every institution in our society. Today, that single region of our country still holds a people power over the majority of the nation, nullifying basic constitutional rights, and in the exercise of its illegal conduct, retarding our growth. The South, in walling itself off from the application of laws and judicial decrees behind an iron curtain of defiance, becomes a law unto itself. It is an autonomous region whose posture toward the central government has elements as defiant as a hostile nation. The unresolved race question is a pathological infection in our social and political anatomy, which has sickened us throughout our history and is still today a largely untreated disease. How has our social health been injured by this condition? The legacy is the impairment of the lives of nearly 20 million of our citizens, based solely on their for domestics, laborers, and always the largest segment of the unemployed. If employment entails heavy work, if the wages are miserable, if the filth is revolting, the job belongs to the Negro. And every Negro knows these truths, and his personality is corroded by a sense of inferiority generated by this degraded status. Negroes north and south still live in segregation, housed in slums, eat in segregation, pray in segregation, and die in segregation. The life experience of the Negro in integration remains an exception even in the north. The imposition of inferiority externally and internally are the slave chains of today. But the Emancipation Proclamation prescribed in a legal and formal sense has never been eliminated in human terms. By burning in the consciousness of white Americans a conviction that Negroes are by nature subnormal, much of the myth was absorbed by the Negro himself, stultifying his energy, his ambition, and his self-respect. The proclamation of inferiority has contended with the proclamation of emancipation, negating its liberating force. Inferiority has justified the low living standards of the Negro, sanctioned his separation from the majority culture, and enslaved him physically and psychologically. Inferiority as a fetter is more subtle and sophisticated than iron chain. It is invisible, and its victim helps to fashion his own bonds. Inequality before the law is so pervasive in the life of the Negro that its detailing is impossible. We boast that ours is a government of laws, but every Negro knows 1,000 examples in which law and government do not protect him. In the past 3 weeks, 3 Christian churches